lot of people asking, you know, tools, materials, what do you use? You can go crazy buying tools. I don't like spending money on tools, but unfortunately you have to sometimes. And there's only a few tools that I would say are a little bit pricey that you may need, not necessarily, but I'll kind of go through and most of the stuff I do get through Del City or Waytech Wire. Just because Del City is local to me, so usually I can go and pick up stuff, but not lately with what's going on. But we'll run through kind of the tool section here. So right down the list, I got a flexible tape measure, so you can kind of run through the car and see, measure things up. Just a regular ruler for cutting my heat shrink. I like to get a little picky and make sure that everything's the same size when it comes to stuff like this. Obviously, scissors. This here is probably the most expensive tool here. This is a crimper for the Deutsch solid contacts. Now, the only real time I need to use this is with the firewall bulkheads, because if you use a regular crimp style tool with the firewall bulkheads, you're never going to get them back apart. So that's one thing you're going to have, and like I said, that's a little pricey. I think they're like 180 bucks or something. It does make it nice though, you know, if you're going to do a whole bunch of crimps and you want to do all the Deutsch stuff with the solid contacts, this is faster. It's the way to go. But this is kind of like my main go-to. It's just an Excel crimper, and actually the main reason I bought this one was because it has jaws to do spark plug wires. And at the time, that's all I really needed when I bought it. And I'm like, okay, it's got another set of jaws on there. Well, they actually do a real nice double crimp here. You know, it'll crimp the top, crimp the little clamp over the wires. So this is kind of my go-to, and it's not that much. I think it was like 75 bucks. And there are other options too. This is just what I have. This is a very basic crimper. Like this one, it's got good leverage to it. You can do bare and insulated stuff. And this just works really nice. Very basic. I think it's a Harbor Freight wire stripper. You know, it works fine. I do like these. This is like kind of a sharp, flat deal for side cutters, only for wiring and cutting zip ties. That's probably the biggest thing I like it for. When you cut a zip tie, it cuts it flush. I can't stand when I reach a new car and I cut my shit on zip ties. Like I think everyone can relate to that. So that's what I use that mostly for. Obviously, we got a heat gun when we're shrinking up all of our stuff. You got to be real careful with some of the coatings and stuff on the wires. You can burn stuff up in a hurry with a heat gun. Tape, this is the only electrical tape I'll use because everything else just sucks. I've tried it all, you know, and that stuff works the greatest. Obviously through here, just a couple, you know, little deep-pinning tools for weather packs here. I don't usually use those anymore, but some things have weather packs on them. Test lights, just a real basic multimeter if you need to make sure you got continuity to test things out. That's pretty much it on that. We'll go through kind of some of the materials. I'll start over here also. This is all my Deutsch connector stuff. So a lot of people ask me, what do you use for connectors? And you'll notice if you start looking at some of these, there's kind of three different ones. There's a DTM, which is your smaller stuff. So obviously the smaller stuff is going to have less current capability. There is stuff posted on what the pins are rated at, so you can look that up. So your DT is your smallest, and you can go to your, or DT or AT, I should say. There's Deutsch is DT. You can also get the Amphenol stuff, which is AT. It's the same stuff, just a different brand, if you will. This is actually a kit you can buy from Del City. This is your DT or AT stuff, which is going to be the next size up, kind of the middle of the road. If you're going to use it for solenoids, lights, whatever, look at the contact rating, and you should be able to figure out what you need it for. The last one in these is the DTP. These are the heavier duty ones, which is going to be all of your higher current stuff because it's going to have a much bigger pin on there. So those are the three main ones that I use. There are other connectors and stuff out there, but those are what I really like. They've been great. And then I went through here, just got real kind of basic stuff, butt connectors, things like that. I like using the bare stuff and then shrink tubing it myself versus some of the, I mean, sometimes you get into a pinch, you got to use some of the PVC stuff, but there's ways around that. These, a lot of people have seen, that one's empty, but I'll show you this one. These are really nice, and I know other people have shown these on videos and whatnot, but I'm out because I use a lot of them. So these are like a step down connector. Like you can put one small wire in here and then 2 or 3 big wires in here. The biggest reason for using these is, well, let's say you're splitting up, you got to run park lights to each light. You got to, 2 wires into one, so that's one way to do it. Probably the biggest thing when we talk about EFI stuff is getting our signal grounds and our 5-volt wires, because those are all going to split to every sensor, so you're going to use those to kind of branch everything out. It makes it work real nice. Back over onto this side, regarding the wire, I use a TXL wire. It's nice and flexible. It's got a high heat resistance, I believe. It's pretty resistant to oil and stuff like that. I'd have to look up all the specs, but that's kind of what I use on everything. As far as battery cable goes, we use the XS Power XP Flex. This is a real light cable. You're going to save quite a bit of weight if you go to some of this stuff. But if you're not going to use something like this, the next best thing that I always did use was a welding cable, a fine strand welding cable. That's kind of the best way to go, that most people agree with also. We'll get to this here. I use these little clamps, rivet them to the frame, or nut and bolt them, whatever. And this makes it real nice because now you can go ahead and just use a zip tie and connect all your wires up and hang them up and things like that. To me, it's better than using the round style clamps because then you don't have to take anything apart. You can just cut the zip tie, put a new one on. These zip ties, I really like. They're a low profile deal. So what you can see is they're kind of flat right there. So when you go through, they come through like that, and then you can cut it off and everything's real nice and flat versus having a big old thing right there. So I use these kind of throughout everything. I'm going to jump back here to, everyone asks how do I print on the heat shrink. I bought this years ago, a Dymo Rhino 4200. You can print on heat shrink, regular vinyl labels, whatever you want. So, and there's other ones out there, that's just what I use because I have it. So what I'll do is I'll heat shrink that onto the wire or whatever loom we got. But the next thing I do is I go ahead and I get this clear heat shrink, and I will shrink that over the top of the heat shrink from the label, because otherwise the oil, anything like that gets on there and you lose your label, where if you have the clear on there, it protects everything. Now it took me a while to find this stuff. Again, Del City has it though. You can get stuff from any parts store. The problem is like as you heat shrink them, they kind of yellow. So this is a crystal clear heat shrink, so it works out really good for me. Regarding the rest of the heat shrink, really all I use, I just go to Napa and I get my little packages for all the small stuff. I use a adhesive line so that when you shrink it up, it melts that little adhesive, makes everything stick together better and whatnot. For bigger stuff, I go ahead and I just order bigger heat shrink for when we have to loom everything up, which takes me to the loom. So there's debate between me and friends and whoever else about loom. I always use this nice flex braided loom, but I use the split stuff, okay? So you can actually open it up. A lot of guys don't. They run everything through, that's fine. If you've been at the racetrack or you've been at someone's shop and you need to add something and you got to cut their expensive harness apart because you want to try something, or you, like I said, need to change something, it sucks. Especially when you're trying to cut it open. Now you got to whatever and make it look pretty. It's tough. So I always use this. That's my personal preference. I like being able to get into the wire harness if I need to do testing, anything like that. So that's why I use this stuff. And I have it, I think, all the way from 1/8 inch up to 3/4. So again, how you lay everything out depends on how the loom's going to work out, which is kind of an art in itself. That takes a long time to figure out. And then I'm just going to run through a couple of the relays I use. This here is a 1HO relay. This is from Leash Electronics. I use a lot of Leash stuff because he makes really cool products. So this is super simple. All you're going to have is your main battery cable coming in, let's say, a 10 gauge wire, and then your 10 gauge or whatever gauge wire out to your power, your source, and then you have your coil, power, and ground for the relay itself. The fuse is built into it, and it's mountable. So you can go ahead, mount that up, run your wires to it, and you're ready to rock. It works out really nice. For instance, like on this car here with the Holley harness, it's got an inline fuse and then a relay just kind of hanging there. It works for most people. If you want to get nice looking, I actually cut all that out and use one of these. I use these on everything from fans, water pumps, so on and so forth. And this is actually, I think, rated up to 70 amps. It says on his website, but that's actually pretty good. I do use these relays quite a bit too for a lot for like coil power. If you're running individual coils, this is a 75 amp relay. Or if you're using, you know, kind of a nitrous fogger system, we can use this to give us power to everything. And then they do, when I get them, I sell them with the connectors here that go on with the pins and everything. So it makes it easy. You're not going, oh shit, which one went where. That way you just kind of plug everything in and go. The last thing here, this is I use the NOS 15620. These are a solid state drive. Well, they label it as a nitrous solenoid driver. It's really just a solid state relay. And you'll see it comes with, you know, all the instructions and whatnot. This is all you're looking at. You got 3 wires here. You're going to have power in, power out, and then this here is going to be a ground wire or a pulse ground wire. Nitrous solenoids, if you want to pulse a fan, anything you want to pulse, whether it be like that, lockup solenoid, trans brake dump. The biggest thing that we probably use it for is trans brake bump, you know, for turbo cars. So you got to have some way to pulse it. I use these because you can almost always find one of these at the racetrack if you need it. I haven't had one fail, but usually it's easier than finding just a regular solid state relay, in my opinion. So that's kind of where I go on that. Hopefully that covers a lot of what I use. If you got questions, ideas, I'm always open to learning new stuff myself. Just post it up, let me know. But I mean, there's more to it, but this is kind of the real basics of it. You know, I just want you guys to see that you don't need a ton of specialty stuff. You know, just the biggest thing is when you're wiring stuff up, think about what you're doing. Take good notes. Double check yourself. That's the biggest part of it. You know, everyone gets scared of wiring, and I was that way in the beginning until I couldn't find anyone who would wire my stuff up. I said, well, I got to figure it out. So yeah, if you got questions, let me know, and we'll keep you guys rolling. Want to do that right now?
Yeah, go ahead.